The rain battered my apartment window in Capitol Hill, Seattle, a relentless drumming that matched the pounding in my chest. It was 8 p.m., and I was hunched over my laptop crunching numbers for tomorrow's shift at the food processing plant. My phone buzzed incessantly on the table, the screen flashing Mom. I ignored it at first. Work was my escape from family drama. But after the 5th call, I sighed and picked up. "Lily, Harper, are you mocking us, my mother?" Margaret shrieked before I could even say hello. Her voice was sharp, slicing through the hum of the rain. 50 cents. "You think this is a joke?" I froze, my fingers tightening around the phone. "What are you talking about, Mom? I've been sending $4,000 every month." "Don't lie to me." My father Robert snatched the phone, his voice booming. "Chloe's sending us $40,000 a month from her modeling, and you 50 cents. You're a disgrace, Lily." The line went dead, leaving only the echo of their words and the rain's steady assault. I stood there stunned, my mind racing. 50 cents I'd been scraping by working overtime, skipping meals to send that $4,000. How could they think I'd mock them and Chloe? $40,000. My sister, the golden child, had always been their pride. But that number didn't add up. Something was wrong, and a knot of suspicion twisted in my gut. Had Chloe lied to them? Was she setting me up? I sank onto the couch, the dim glow of my thrift store lamp casting shadows on the walls. My apartment was small, barely 400 square feet, with peeling paint and a leaky faucet, but it was mine, a sanctuary from the chaos of my family in Tacoma, an hour's drive away. I'd moved here 3 years ago at 25, desperate to escape the suffocating favoritism that had defined my childhood. The memory of it came rushing back, as vivid as the storm outside. Growing up, I was the invisible daughter, the plain one next to Chloe, my 5 years younger sister. She was born with a face that turned heads, big blue eyes, golden curls, a smile that made strangers stop and stare. "She's a star in the making," my parents would say, their eyes sparkling as they watched her twirl in her latest Nordstrom dress. Me, I wore hand-me-downs from Goodwill faded jeans and oversized sweaters that smelled faintly of someone else's life. Adults would pat my head and chuckle, "Lily's so ordinary." But Chloe, oh, she's a dream. My parents were convinced Chloe would be a supermodel or actress, their ticket to pride, and maybe even riches. They poured everything into her: dance lessons, modeling classes, trips to casting calls in Los Angeles. I once begged to join a ballet class, my heart set on the grace of a pirouette. But my mother snapped, "We can't afford it, Lily. We're saving for Chloe's future." I was 10, and the sting of those words never faded. The only person who saw me was my grandmother Eleanor, who passed away when I was 8. She called me her little tulip, a nickname born from the spring. I was born when tulips bloomed across her garden. She'd sit me on her lap, her warm hands braiding my hair, and say, "Lily, my tulip, you're strong. You'll grow through any storm just like those flowers." She gave me a silver necklace with a tiny tulip pendant, which I still wore, a quiet reminder of her love. When she died, she left me a small inheritance, $10,000 locked in a trust, until I turned 30. My parents never mentioned it, but I knew they resented that it was for me, not Chloe. At home, the disparity was stark. Chloe's room was a shrine of pink ruffles and new toys, while I shared a cramped corner of the living room, my bed squeezed next to a shelf with my grandparents' faded photos. When Chloe at 10 demanded her own room, my parents didn't hesitate. "Lily, moved to the basement," my father said, barely looking up from his newspaper. "You don't need much space." The basement was damp with a single bulb swinging from the ceiling, but I obeyed, dragging my mattress down the creaky stairs. I was 15, and I learned to swallow my anger to make myself small. School was no escape. Teachers fawned over Chloe, even when she barely tried. I worked hard earning A's, but my parents never noticed. Chloe got a call back for a commercial they'd brag at dinner, while my report card sat untouched on the counter. When I mentioned my dream of becoming a school nurse, my mother laughed. "University Lily. We can't afford that. Get a job after high school. Chloe needs our support." I was crushed, but I nodded, because arguing was pointless. Our family wasn't poor. My father worked as a mechanic, my mother a part-time receptionist, but every spare dollar went to Chloe's ambitions. After graduation, I took a job at a food processing plant 3 bus stops from home, earning $3,500 a month. I wanted to stay in Tacoma, save money, maybe build a life, but living with my parents felt like drowning. Chloe, meanwhile, stayed rent-free, basking in their adoration. At 22, she was scouted by a small modeling agency while shopping at a mall, and my parents' excitement was deafening. "Our girl's going to Hollywood," they crowed, as if I didn't exist. I moved to Seattle, renting this tiny apartment to find some peace. It wasn't easy. $1,500 rent ate half my salary, but for the first time I could breathe. I decorated with second-hand furniture and a single potted tulip on the windowsill, a nod to Grandma Eleanor. Life was quiet until Chloe called me a year ago, her voice bright and earnest. "Lily, we owe Mom and Dad so much," she said. "They've sacrificed everything for us. Let's send them money to show our gratitude. How about $4,000 a month? We'll split it." I hesitated. $4,000 was more than I could afford without cutting corners. But Chloe's words stirred a flicker of guilt. "They're in debt because of us," she added. "We need to help." I agreed, not knowing how it would unravel me. To make it work, I took on weekend shifts as a security guard at a construction site in Bellevue, enduring scorching summers and freezing winters. I lived on instant noodles and coffee, my savings dwindling, but I told myself it was for family. Now, staring at my phone, their accusations burned. 50 cents Chloe's $40,000. None of it made sense. I clutched the tulip pendant, its cool metal grounding me. Grandma Eleanor's words echoed, "You'll grow through any storm." I didn't know what Chloe had done, but I was done being invisible. Something had to change, and it started with finding the truth. The rain hadn't stopped since that call from my parents, a relentless Seattle downpour that mirrored the storm brewing inside me. It was 2 days later, and I sat at my wobbly kitchen table, staring at my bank statement on my laptop screen. The numbers didn't lie. $4,000 withdrawn, every month wired to my parents' account, under the name Sunshine, just as Chloe and I had agreed. But there, buried in the transaction history, was something else. A measly 50-cent transfer listed under my name, Lily Harper. My stomach churned. Why was my name tied to 50 cents? And why did my parents think Chloe was sending $40,000? The accusation from that call, "You're a disgrace." Lily looped in my mind, each word a jab to my already bruised heart. I leaned back in my chair, the creak of its worn wood echoing in my tiny Capitol Hill apartment. The tulip pendant around my neck felt heavier, a reminder of Grandma Eleanor's words. "You're strong, my little tulip," but strength was hard to muster when your own family saw you as a mockery. I replayed Chloe's suggestion from a year ago, her voice so cheerful over the phone. "Let's keep it a secret, Lily. Use a shared name, Sunshine, so it's from both of us." At the time, it seemed sweet, a sisterly pact. Now it felt like a trap. Had Chloe orchestrated this? Was she letting me take the fall while she basked in our parents' praise? I needed answers, but first I had to survive the day. My shift at the food processing plant started in an hour, and I couldn't afford to be late. I pulled on my work boots, the soles worn thin from months of double shifts, and grabbed my raincoat. The bus ride to the industrial park was a blur, my mind tangled in questions. Chloe had always been the golden child, the one who could do no wrong. But $40,000 a month, even for a model, that was absurd. She'd been scouted by a small agency, not some big-shot Hollywood firm. Something wasn't adding up, and the suspicion gnawed at me like a persistent itch. At the plant, the hum of machinery and the sharp scent of processed grains filled the air. I worked the conveyor line, sorting packages, my hands moving on autopilot. My coworker Sarah, a sharp-tongued woman with a knack for getting under my skin, noticed my distraction. "What's with you, Harper?" she sneered, tossing a box onto the belt. "Dreaming of a corner office, stick to packing Han. You're not management material." Her words stung, but I bit my tongue. Sarah had a degree from the University of Washington and never let me forget I didn't. I'd been studying for a supply chain management certification in secret, poring over textbooks after midnight, determined to prove her wrong. But today her jab hit harder, piling onto the weight of my parents' accusations. I pushed through the shift, my body aching by the end, but there was no rest waiting for me. I had a weekend gig as a security guard at a construction site in Bellevue, a 45-minute bus ride away. The extra $1,200 a month was the only way I could keep sending $4,000 to my parents while covering my $1,500 rent and basic bills. The site was a skeleton of steel beams and concrete exposed to the elements. In summer, the sun baked me in my heavy uniform. In winter, like now, the wind sliced through my jacket, chilling me to the bone. I patrolled the perimeter, flashlight in hand, my boots sinking into mud. The work was grueling, but the crew was kind. Mike, a burly foreman with a gap-toothed grin, often slipped me a coffee from the site's makeshift break room. "You're tougher than half these guys, Lily," he'd say, winking. "Keep it up." His encouragement was a small warmth in the cold, but it couldn't erase the exhaustion or the growing doubt about why I was killing myself for a family that didn't see me. Back home that night, I collapsed onto my couch, too tired to even heat up the instant noodles in my cupboard. My phone buzzed a text from Chloe. "Call me. We need to talk about Mom and Dad." I stared at the screen, my thumb hovering over the call button. Part of me wanted to confront her, to demand why my name was on that 50-cent transfer. But another part, the part that still remembered the little girl who used to steal my crayons and giggle, hesitated. Chloe had always been selfish, but this felt like betrayal on a new level. I set the phone down, my eyes drifting to the potted tulip on my windowsill, its petals a soft yellow against the gray cityscape. Grandma Eleanor had loved tulips, planting them every spring in her Tacoma garden. They're survivors, she'd told me once, kneeling in the dirt. They bloom even after the harshest winters. I touched the pendant at my neck, tracing its delicate shape. If I was a tulip, I was buried deep right now, struggling to break through the soil. The memory of Grandma Eleanor steadied me. She'd been the only one who saw me not as Chloe's shadow, but as Lily, her little tulip. When I was 6, she'd caught me crying after my parents praised Chloe's dance recital while ignoring my science fair ribbon. She pulled me onto her lap, her lavender-scented cardigan enveloping me, and said, "Lily, you don't need their spotlight. You've got your own light, and it's brighter than you know." When she died 2 years later, I clung to her necklace like a lifeline. My parents barely noticed my grief, too busy fawning over baby Chloe. Now at 28, I wondered what Grandma would say about this mess. Would she tell me to keep giving to be the good daughter? Or would she see the truth that I was drowning to keep a family afloat that didn't even want me? I opened my laptop again, pulling up the bank records. The 50-cent transfer was there, time-stamped the same day as the $4,000. It was deliberate, a cruel jab. Chloe's words from a year ago echoed, "Let's keep it a secret." Had she planned this all along, letting me bleed my savings while she took the credit? I thought back to our childhood, the countless times she'd gotten away with everything. When she borrowed my favorite book and tore its pages, my mother shrugged. "She's just a kid, Lily." When she demanded my bed because hers felt lumpy, my father said, "Be the big sister, Lily." I'd spent my life bending, shrinking, making room for Chloe's light. But this lying to our parents, painting me as a cheapskate while I worked myself to the bone, this was a line I couldn't ignore. I scrolled through my contacts, my finger pausing on Emma Thompson's name. Emma, my high school friend, worked as a financial consultant downtown. She was sharp, no nonsense, the kind of person who could smell a lie from a mile away. If anyone could help me untangle this, it was her. I typed a quick text, "Can we meet? Something's up with Chloe and my parents." Her reply came instantly, "Pike Place tomorrow noon. Spill it, Lily." I exhaled a flicker of relief, cutting through the fog. Emma would know what to do. I closed my laptop and stood catching my reflection in the window. My face was pale, dark circles under my eyes from too many sleepless nights. But there, glinting at my throat, was the tulip pendant, a tiny spark of hope. I wasn't ready to give up. Not yet. I'd find out what Chloe was hiding, and I'd fight for the truth, because if I was a tulip, I was damn well going to bloom. The next day, the Seattle sky was a heavy gray, the kind that promised more rain, but held off as if giving me a moment to breathe. I sat at a corner table in a bustling Pike Place market cafe, the air thick with the scent of roasted coffee and fresh pastries. Tourists milled outside, snapping photos of the iconic fish-throwing vendors, but my eyes were fixed on the door, waiting for Emma Thompson. My phone sat silent on the table. Chloe's unanswered text from last night, "Call me? We need to talk about Mom and Dad," still glaring at me. I hadn't replied. Not yet. The 50-cent transfer under my name, the $4,000 I'd been sending under Sunshine, and my parents' venomous accusations swirled in my head like a storm I couldn't outrun. Emma was my lifeline, the one person who could help me make sense of this betrayal. Emma swept in at noon sharp, her tailored blazer and confident stride cutting through the cafe's chaos. She was my high school friend now, a financial consultant with a knack for seeing through people's facades. "Lily, you look like you haven't slept in a week," she said, sliding into the seat across from me. Her hazel eyes scanned my face, sharp but kind. "Spill it. What's going on?" I took a deep breath, clutching the tulip pendant at my neck for courage. "It's my family," I began, my voice low. "Mom and Dad called 2 days ago, screaming that I'm mocking them with a 50-cent transfer. They think Chloe's sending $40,000 a month, and I'm nothing. But I've been sending $4,000 every month, Emma. I checked my bank, it's all there under Sunshine, like Chloe and I agreed. But there's this 50-cent transfer under my name, and I don't know why." Emma's brow furrowed, her fingers tapping the table. 50 cents. That's not an accident, it's a statement. And $40 from Chloe. No way, she's a part-time model, not Kendall Jenner. She leaned forward, her voice dropping. Tell me everything, start with this sunshine deal. I recounted Chloe's call a year ago, her cheerful insistence that we send $4,000 a month to repay our parents' sacrifices. She said they were in debt because of us, I explained. I believed her. I've been working double shifts Emma days at the food plant weekends at a construction site in Bellevue. I'm barely eating to make it work, but now they think Chloe's the hero and I'm a joke. Emma's expression darkened as I spoke, her lips pressing into a thin line. When I finished, she leaned back, crossing her arms. Lily, I need to tell you something, but you're not gonna like it. She paused, gauging my reaction. I ran into a mutual friend of Chloe's last week at a networking event. She was bragging about how her big sister, that's you, is her personal ATM. Said you're funding her lifestyle, but she's been telling everyone she's the one sending big money to your parents. She's playing you, Lily, and she's playing them. The words hit like a punch to the gut. My coffee cup trembled in my hands, the liquid sloshing. She's, what? I whispered, my voice cracking. She told people I'm her ATM. The cafe's chatter faded, drowned out by the roar of betrayal in my ears. Chloe, my little sister, the one I'd sacrificed for my whole life, was painting herself as the saint while I bled dry. I thought of the nights I'd skipped dinner, the weekends I'd spent freezing at the construction site, the dreams I'd shelved to keep this family afloat. And for what? For her to lie and take the credit. Emma reached across the table, squeezing my hand. I'm sorry, Lily, but there's more. This friend said Chloe's been blowing money on designer clothes, anthropology-free people, you name it. And those $200 facials at Jean Juarez, she's not paying for them with modeling gigs. You are. Your parents don't need $4,000 a month either. Your dad's still working as a mechanic, pulling $60,000 a year. Your mom's part-time, but they're not drowning. They're just greedy. And Chloe's feeding it. I stared at the table, my vision blurring. The tulip pendant felt like the only thing anchoring me. Grandma Eleanor's voice echoed faintly. You've got your own light. But right now that light felt snuffed out. Why would she do this? I asked, more to myself than Emma. I've given her everything. My whole life I've stepped aside for her. Because she's used to winning, Emma said bluntly. Your parents made her the star and you the stagehand. She's not thinking about you, she's thinking about her image. That 50-cent transfer. It's her way of keeping you small. But Lily, you're not small. You're killing yourself for people who don't see you. Her words were a spark, igniting something deep inside. I'd spent years shrinking, swallowing my pain to keep the peace. But this lie, this betrayal was too much. I pulled out my phone, my hands shaking as I dialed Chloe's number. She picked up on the second ring, her voice bright and fake. Lily. Finally, I was worried you were avoiding me. Cut the act, Chloe, and I said, my voice steady despite the fire in my chest. I know about the 50-cent transfer. I know you've been telling Mom and Dad you're sending $40,000. I know you're using my money to play the perfect daughter. Why would you lie like this? There was a pause, then a soft laugh, cold and cutting. Oh, Lily, don't be so dramatic, she said. You think Mom and Dad would believe you're sending anything, you're just you. I'm the one they're proud of. I told them what they wanted to hear. It's not my fault they think you're cheap. Her words were a knife, twisting deep. Not your fault, I snapped. I'm working myself to death, Chloe. I'm eating ramen to send that $4,000. And you're out there buying $200 jeans and telling your friends I'm your ATM. Another pause, then her tone shifted defensive. You agreed to it, Lily. You wanted to help Mom and Dad. Don't put this on me. Besides, I'm building my career. I need to look the part. You wouldn't understand, you're just a factory worker. The cafe spun around me, the weight of her dismissal crushing. Just a factory worker. Just Lily. Just the shadow. But then I saw the tulip pendant reflected in my coffee cup, its silver glinting like a beacon. Grandma Eleanor's words surged back. You'll grow through any storm. Chloe could take my money, my parents' love, but she couldn't take my strength. I straightened my voice cold. I'm done, Chloe. No more money. No more lies. You want to be the star. Do it without me. I hung up before she could respond, my heart pounding but lighter, as if I'd shed a chain I hadn't known I was wearing. Emma raised an eyebrow, a small smile tugging at her lips. That's my girl, she said, but you need to do more than just tell Chloe off. Stop the payments, Lily. Your parents don't need $4,000. They're using it to prop up Chloe's ego. You're not their bank. You're allowed to live for yourself. I nodded the truth, settling like a stone. Emma was right. I'd been pouring my life into a family that didn't value me, and for what to be mocked with 50 cents. I opened my banking app, my finger hovering over the recurring transfer. With a single tap, I canceled it, the confirmation screen, a quiet victory. But the relief was tinged with fear. What would my parents say? Would they come after me? I pushed the thought aside, focusing on Emma's steady gaze. There's something else, I said, my voice softer now. Last night, I found a letter from my Grandma Eleanor tucked in an old book. She wrote it before she died. I pulled the folded paper from my pocket, its edges worn from years of hiding. She called me her tulip, said I'd always find a way to bloom. I forgot how much she believed in me. Emma's eyes softened. She was right, you know. You're not just surviving, Lily, you're growing. But you can't do it if you're chained to your family's drama. Let them go. You've got your own life to build. I tucked the letter back into my pocket, the weight of it grounding me. The cafe's noise returned, a reminder of the world moving forward. I wasn't ready to face my parents yet, but I knew what I had to do. No more bending, no more shrinking. I was Lily Harper, and I was done being anyone's shadow. As I left the cafe, the first raindrops fell cool against my skin. I didn't flinch. I'd weathered worse storms, and I'd weather this one too. Somewhere Grandma Eleanor was watching, and I'd make her proud. The Seattle drizzle had turned into a full-blown downpour by the time I heard the sharp knock on my apartment door. It was a Saturday evening, a rare night off from my security gig at the Bellevue construction site, and I was curled up on my threadbare couch, the glow of a single lamp casting long shadows across my tiny Capitol Hill studio. The tulip pendant hung heavy at my neck, a silent reminder of Grandma Eleanor's words. You'll grow through any storm. I'd canceled the $4,000 monthly transfer to my parents 2 days ago. After Emma's revelations and my call with Chloe, I knew there'd be fallout, but I hadn't expected it so soon or so forcefully. I opened the door to find my parents, Margaret and Robert Harper, standing in the hallway, their faces twisted with anger. Rain dripped from their coats, pooling on the worn linoleum. Behind them, the stairwell smelled of damp concrete and takeout from the neighbor's apartment. My mother's eyes, sharp and accusing, locked onto mine. Lily Harper. What do you think you're doing? She snapped, pushing past me without waiting for an invitation. My father followed, his heavy footsteps echoing in the small space. I stood frozen, my heart thudding as they invaded my sanctuary. You stopped the money, my father said, his voice low and hard, like the rumble of a distant storm. He loomed in the center of my living room, his mechanic's hands clenched into fists. "Chloe told us everything. You're abandoning your family, Lily, after all we've done for you." I closed the door, my hands trembling, but my resolve steady. "All you've done," I said, my voice quieter than I felt. "You mean screaming at me for sending 50 cents when I've been giving you $4,000. Every month I'm not abandoning anyone. I'm done being used." My mother's laugh was sharp, cutting through the air like glass. "Used? Oh, don't play the victim, Lily. Chloe's the one carrying this family. She's sending us $40,000 a month from her modeling career. And you think you're helping with your pathetic $4,000. We don't need your scraps." She crossed her arms, her designer scarf a gift from Chloe, no doubt glinting under the lamp's light. I stared at her, the weight of their delusion pressing against my chest. $40,000, I said, my voice rising despite myself. "Chloe's not sending that. She's barely making $1,000 a month, Mom. She's a part-time model for online catalogs, not a superstar. I've been sending the $4,000, every cent of it, while she takes the credit. And that 50-cent transfer, that was her making sure you'd think I'm nothing." My father's face reddened, his jaw tightening. "Don't you dare lie about your sister," he growled. "Chloe's building a career. She's got talent, ambition, things you'll never understand. You're just jealous, Lily. Always have been." The words stung, slicing open old wounds from a childhood spent in Chloe's shadow. I thought of the years I'd worn hand-me-downs, while Chloe paraded in Nordstrom dresses, the nights I'd slept in the damp Tacoma basement so she could have her own room. I'd swallowed it all, convinced it was my role as the older sister. But now, standing in my own apartment, I felt something shift, a spark of anger, bright and unyielding, like the tulip pendant catching the light. "I'm not jealous," I said, stepping forward, my voice steady now. "I'm tired of working myself to death. While you praise Chloe for lies, tired of being invisible. I want the truth. Chloe said you were in debt because of us. Is that true? Why do you need $4,000 a month?" My mother's eyes flickered a brief crack in her armor. She glanced at my father, who shifted uncomfortably. "Debt," she said, her tone dismissive. "There's no debt, Lily. We've managed fine. The money, it's for Chloe's future. She needs it to keep up appearances, to get bigger gigs. You wouldn't understand. You've never had to shine." I blinked, the truth hitting like a cold wave. No debt, no desperation, just greed, pure and simple. "So you've been using my money to buy Chloe's clothes, her facials, her whole fake lifestyle." I said, my voice trembling with disbelief. "I've been eating ramen, working weekends in the rain. Dipping into my savings for what? So you can buy her $200 scarves and pretend she's a star." My father's face hardened. "Watch your tone, Lily. Chloe's our pride. She's going places. You're just you. You've got a job, a roof over your head. What more do you need? Be grateful and keep helping your sister." I laughed, a bitter sound that surprised even me. "Grateful for being your ATM, for being screamed at over 50 cents. No, Dad, I'm done. I've given you everything, my money, my dreams, my whole life. And you still don't see me." My mother's eyes narrowed, her voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "If you're going to be selfish, Lily, we don't need you. We've got Chloe, and we've got your grandmother's inheritance. That $10,000 Eleanor left you. We'll use it for Chloe's next big break. You don't deserve it anyway." The mention of Grandma Eleanor's inheritance was a gut punch. That $10,000 locked in a trust until I turned 30 was the only thing I had from the one person who'd ever loved me unconditionally. The thought of them taking it, squandering it on Chloe's delusions made my blood boil. I stepped closer, my voice low and fierce. You touch that money, and I'll fight you every step of the way. It's mine from Grandma, not you. And I'm not your daughter anymore. Not if this is what family means to you. My father's face contorted a mix of shock and rage. You ungrateful little, he started, but I cut him off, opening the door and pointing to the hallway. Get out, I said, my voice like steel. Don't call me, don't come back. I'm done. My mother gasped, clutching her scarf as if I'd struck her. You'll regret this, Lily, she hissed. You'll be alone with nothing. My father grabbed her arm, pulling her toward the door, but not before he shot me a look of pure contempt. We didn't raise you to be this, he muttered. The door slammed behind them, the sound echoing in the quiet apartment. I stood there, my breath-ragged tears burning my eyes. The rain pounded outside, a steady rhythm that matched the ache in my chest. I'd done it, I'd cut the cord, severed the tie that had bound me to their expectations. But the freedom came with a cost. I sank to the floor, my back against the door, and let the tears fall. They weren't just for this moment, but for every moment I'd been unseen, unvalued, unloved. I reached for the tulip pendant, its cool metal grounding me. Grandma Eleanor's voice whispered through the haze. You'll bloom, my tulip, even after the harshest winters. I thought of her garden in Tacoma, the rows of yellow and red tulips that defied the cold. If she could see me now, would she be proud I'd lost my family, but maybe I'd found something else myself. I stood wiping my eyes and walked to the window. The potted tulip on the sill stood tall, its petals vibrant despite the gray world outside. I wasn't done fighting. I'd keep studying for my certification, keep building a life that was mine. My parents could have, Chloe could chase her empty dreams, but they couldn't have me anymore. As the rain slowed to a drizzle, I felt a quiet resolve settle in. The storm wasn't over. Chloe might lash out, my parents might try to guilt me back, but I was ready. I was Lily Harper, and I was going to bloom no matter what. The Seattle skyline gleamed through my new apartment window, a mosaic of glass and steel reflecting the rare February sun. It had been 3 months since I slammed the door on my parents cutting the cord that tethered me to their relentless demands. My Capitol Hill studio with its peeling paint and leaky faucet was a memory now. I'd moved to a 1-bedroom near Lake Union, a modest but bright space that felt like a fresh start. The rent was steep, $2,000 a month, but it was worth every penny for the view of the lake, its surface shimmering like a promise of peace. I stood by the window, cradling a mug of coffee, and watched a kayaker glide across the water. For the first time in years, I felt like I was breathing my own air. The tulip pendant at my neck caught the light, a quiet reminder of Grandma Eleanor's faith in me. I'd placed a pot of yellow tulips on the windowsill, their vibrant petals a daily nod to her words, "You'll bloom, my tulip." And I was blooming slowly but surely. The $4,000 monthly transfers to my parents were gone, and with them the crushing weight of their expectations. I'd traded exhaustion for possibility, and the change was tangible. My savings, once drained to nothing, were creeping back up. I'd even bought a new coat, a practical navy blue one from REI, not a hand-me-down. It felt like a small victory, a step toward a life that was mine. Work was the cornerstone of my transformation. After months of late-night studying, I'd earned my supply chain management certification, a credential that opened doors I'd never dared knock on. Emma, my financial consultant friend, had connected me with a logistics company in downtown Seattle. a sleek operation handling supply chains for tech startups. I started as a coordinator, but within weeks my knack for streamlining processes caught the eye of my manager. Last month, they promoted me to team lead, boosting my salary to $500 a month. The first paycheck felt like a dream enough to cover rent, groceries, and even a weekly coffee at Le Panier without wincing at the cost. My new office overlooked Elliott Bay, a far cry from the fluorescent-lit food processing plant, where I'd spent years sorting packages. But that old job lingered in my mind, especially because of Sarah, the coworker, who'd mocked me relentlessly. "You're not management material." She'd sneered, her words a constant jab at my lack of a college degree. Fate has a funny way of turning tables. When I started at the logistics company, I found Sarah there, transferred from the plant to a junior role on my team. Her smug grin vanished when she saw me, leading the morning briefing, my voice steady as I assigned tasks. I could have gloated, could have made her life miserable, but that wasn't me. Instead, I pulled her aside after a meeting. "Sarah, I know we've had our differences," I said, keeping my tone even, "but I want us to work well together. Let's start fresh." Her eyes widened and she nodded, mumbling an apology. It wasn't about revenge, it was about proving to myself that I was bigger than her pettiness. That moment felt like a milestone, a sign I was shedding the old Lily, the one who'd let others define her worth. I was building something new, not just at work, but in every corner of my life. My apartment was my canvas. I'd splurged on a second-hand bookshelf from a Fremont thrift shop, filling it with logistics textbooks and a few novels I'd always wanted to read. A framed photo of Grandma Eleanor's tulip garden sat on the shelf, her smile a quiet encouragement. I'd started cooking again, simple things like stir-fries and pasta, savoring the act of feeding myself after years of surviving on instant noodles. On weekends, I walked to Gasworks Park, the city's industrial relics softened by green hills and kite flyers. Seattle was no longer just a place to survive, it was becoming home. But independence wasn't just about money or a new address. It was about reclaiming my mind, my heart. I'd spent so long believing I was less than Chloe, less than my parents' dreams, that letting go of that lie was a daily fight. Some nights I'd lie awake, the lake's reflection dancing on my ceiling, and wonder if I'd done the right thing. Cutting off my family left a void, a hollow ache where their voices used to be. But then I'd touch the tulip pendant and remember Emma's words at Pike Place. "You're not their bank. You're allowed to live for yourself." She was right. I was learning to fill that void with my own choices, my own light. I wasn't alone in this journey. Emma checked in weekly. Her texts a mix of encouragement and sass, "Proud of you." Team lead, "Now go buy yourself a cupcake." My construction site crew from Bellevue, especially Mike, sent occasional messages joking about missing their toughest guard. Their kindness reminded me that family didn't have to mean blood, it could mean the people who saw you, who cheered for you. I was even starting to connect with my new coworkers, joining them for after-work drinks at a Belltown bar. I'd sip a ginger ale, laughing at their stories, feeling like I belonged. As I stood by the window, the sun dipped low, painting the lake gold. I set my mug down and traced the tulip pendant's delicate edges. Grandma Eleanor had believed in me when no one else did, and now I was believing in myself. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was growing like a tulip, breaking through spring soil. The road ahead wouldn't be easy. My parents might try to pull me back, and Chloe's lies could still haunt me. But I was ready to face whatever came with my head high and my roots deep. The Seattle spring was in full bloom, cherry blossoms, painting the streets pink, but the air in my Lake Union apartment felt heavy when an unexpected knock came at my door. It was a crisp April afternoon, 6 months since I'd cut ties with my parents and Chloe, and I was folding laundry, a podcast humming in the background. I'd settled into my new life team lead at the logistics company, a steady $500 a month, and a growing sense of self that felt like the tulips thriving on my windowsill. The tulip pendant at my neck, Grandma Eleanor's gift, was a quiet anchor, a reminder that I'd chosen to bloom on my own terms. I opened the door expecting a neighbor or a delivery, but instead found a stranger in a cheap suit holding a clipboard. His eyes darted past me, scanning the apartment. "Lily Harper?" he asked, his voice clipped. "I'm with Cascade Financial Services. We're looking for Margaret and Robert Harper. Are you family?" The name of my parents hit like a cold wind, stirring memories I'd worked hard to bury. I crossed my arms, leaning against the doorframe. "I don't have a family," I said flatly. "Whatever they owe, it's not my problem." He frowned, flipping through his papers. They listed this address as a contact point. They're in deep $50,000 in consumer debt. Defaulted loans, the works. They mentioned a daughter who might cover it. That you? I laughed, a sharp, bitter sound that echoed in the hallway. They're dreaming. I haven't spoken to them in months. Try their place in Tacoma. I started to close the door, but his next words stopped me cold. "They're not in Tacoma anymore," he said. "They sold the house, living in Renton, now some rundown apartment. Thought you should know." The door clicked shut, but his words lingered a crack in the wall I'd built between me and my past. I sank onto my couch, the podcast's cheerful chatter now an irritant. Sold the house, Renton. My childhood home with its creaky porch and Grandma Eleanor's tulip garden was gone. I shouldn't have cared. Those people had chosen Chloe's lies over me, but a pang of loss twisted in my chest. I touched the tulip pendant, grounding myself. They'd made their choices, and I'd made mine. Still, curiosity gnawed at me. What had happened to them? I didn't have to wait long for answers. Emma Ever the connector called me the next day, her voice a mix of concern and disbelief. "Lily, you won't believe this," she said, skipping pleasantries. "I heard from a friend who knows Chloe's crowd. Your family's in a mess, like epic mess." She filled me in, piecing together a story that was as tragic as it was predictable. Chloe, my golden child sister, had fallen hard. Her modeling career, always more aspiration than reality, had crumbled under the weight of her own delusions. Last year, she'd been scouted by a shady talent agency, promising to make her a Hollywood actress. They dangled visions of red carpets and blockbuster roles. But there was a catch: a $50,000 investment for training, headshots, and industry connections. Chloe, desperate to maintain her image as the family's star, convinced my parents it was her big break. My father, Robert, cashed out his early retirement savings, and my mother, Margaret, sold their Tacoma house to cover the rest. They handed over the money without a contract, blinded by Chloe's promises of fame. The agency vanished overnight, a classic scam. No training, no connections, just an empty office and a disconnected phone line. The $50,000, my parents' life savings, and the equity from our family home was gone. They were left with nothing but debt, having taken out loans to cover living expenses while betting on Chloe's fantasy. Emma's voice softened as she continued. "They're in Renton now, Lily. A one-bedroom apartment, barely 600 square feet. Your dad's working temp jobs through an agency. Your mom's doing part-time retail. It's rough." I stared at the tulips on my windowsill, their petals catching the afternoon light. A part of me wanted to feel vindicated after all they'd chosen. Chloe's lies mocked my $4,000 while praising her fake $40,000. But the satisfaction was fleeting, replaced by a dull ache. And Chloe, I asked, bracing myself. Emma sighed. She's bartending at some dive bar in Pioneer Square. No more modeling. She's been telling people she was almost famous, but the regulars just laugh. She's not the radiant girl she used to be, Lily. Too many late nights, too much drinking. It's sad. I ended the call, my mind reeling. Chloe, who'd once turned heads with her golden curls and megawatt smile, was now a punchline in a bar. My parents, who'd built their world around her, were scraping by in a Renton slum. I should have felt free, but the truth was messier. They'd hurt me, used me, but they were still human, still the family I'd once loved. I walked to my bookshelf, pulling out the framed photo of Grandma Eleanor's garden. Her tulips had bloomed every spring, no matter how harsh the winter. Maybe that was the lesson, not to gloat over their fall, but to keep growing despite it. A week later, I got a text from Mike, my old foreman from the Bellevue construction site. Yo, Lily, guess who's on my crew? Your dad. Old guy's struggling, but he's trying. Says his kid used to work here, sending him money. Crazy, right? The message hit like a stone. Robert, the man who'd called me a disgrace, was now hauling rebar where I'd once stood guard. I could imagine him, his proud shoulders slumped, dodging Mike's questions about the kid who'd worked so hard for him. I didn't reply. What was there to say? I stood by the lake, the water lapping gently against the shore. The tulip pendant warmed against my skin, a quiet strength. My family's collapse wasn't my fault, but it wasn't my victory either. They'd chased a mirage, and it had cost them everything. I'd chosen a different path, one rooted in truth and hard work. As the sun dipped low, I whispered to the lake, to Grandma Eleanor, to myself. I'm not them. I'm Lily, and I'm enough. The June sun hung low over Bainbridge Island, casting a golden glow across the Puget Sound as I stepped out of the ferry terminal. The air was warm, laced with the briny scent of the sea, and the distant hum of a wedding band drifted from a nearby chapel. I adjusted the strap of my dress, a simple emerald green number I'd splurged on for Emma's wedding, and felt the tulip pendant bounce lightly against my collarbone. It had been 9 months since I'd cut ties with my parents and Chloe, 9 months of building a life that felt like mine. Today, at 29, I was here to celebrate Emma, the friend who'd helped me see my worth, and maybe, just maybe, to glimpse a future I hadn't dared imagine. The chapel was a quaint wooden structure, its stained glass windows catching the light like scattered jewels. Inside, Emma stood radiant in white, her laughter filling the room as she danced with her new husband, a kind-eyed colleague named Tom. I watched from a pew, my heart swelling with gratitude. Emma had been my rock, the one who'd sat across from me at Pike Place and said, "You're not their bank Lily." Now, seeing her joy, I felt a quiet pride in my own journey. I'd bloomed just like Grandma Eleanor's tulips, and this moment was proof. As the reception began, Emma waved me, over her grin, mischievous. "Lily, meet James Carter," she said, nudging a tall man toward me. James was in his early 30s, with warm brown eyes and a disarming smile that crinkled at the corners. He's an architect, loves hiking, and this makes a mean latte. James laughed, offering his hand. "She's overselling me," he said, his voice easy. "But I do love a good coffee. You a Seattleite, Lily." "Born and raised," I said, shaking his hand. His grip was firm, his gaze steady. and something about him felt like the first sip of coffee on a chilly morning, comforting, promising. We fell into conversation, trading stories about favorite trails in the Cascades and the best cafes in Fremont. When he mentioned planting tulips in his backyard, I touched my pendant instinctively. "Tulips are my thing," I said, smiling. "They're tougher than they look." "Like you, I bet," he said, his tone playful but sincere. I laughed, a lightness spreading through me. For the first time in years, I wasn't bracing for judgment or comparison. I was just Lily, and that was enough. The reception stretched into the evening, the sky deepening to a velvet blue. James and I sat on a bench outside, the sound of waves mingling with the band's soft jazz. He asked about my work, and I told him about my role as a team lead at the logistics company. The certification I'd earned, the apartment by Lake Union with its tulip-filled windowsill. "Sounds like you've built something real," he said, his eyes holding mine. "Not everyone can do that." I thought of my old life, Chloe's lies, my parents' greed, the 50-cent transfer that had nearly broken me. It wasn't easy, I admitted. I used to think I had to earn my place in the world, but I'm learning I already have one. He nodded, and in that moment I felt seen, not as Chloe's sister or my parents' disappointment, but as Lily Harper, whole and enough. As the night wound down, Emma pulled me aside, her eyes sparkling. "You and James hit it off," she teased. "Told you he's your kind of people." She hugged me, her voice softening. "Lily, you're shining. Don't ever dim that light." I hugged her back, whispering, "Thanks for helping me find it." Walking to the ferry under a starlit sky, I felt a new chapter opening. James had slipped me his number, suggesting a hike next weekend. I smiled, imagining us trekking through Mount Rainier's trails, maybe stopping to admire a field of wildflowers. I wanted to live fully now, work, love, all of it. I touched the tulip pendant, silently promising Grandma Eleanor I'd keep blooming. But my journey wasn't just about me. Inspired by Emma's community work, I joined a Seattle support group for young women escaping toxic families, sharing my story. Chloe's betrayal, my parents' collapse, my hard-won independence had lit a spark in others. I was planning a small scholarship fund in Grandma Eleanor's name, using my savings to help girls like me chase their dreams. It was my way of planting tulips for others, ensuring they'd bloom too. I believe everyone has a tulip within waiting to bloom. Society often pushes us to compare, to shrink, but true freedom comes from embracing your own path. As I boarded the ferry, the sound stretching vast before me, I knew I was ready for whatever came next. As the ferry glided back toward Seattle, the Puget Sound shimmered under the moon, a vast mirror reflecting the stars and my own quiet thoughts. I leaned against the railing, the tulip pendant cool against my skin, and let the rhythm of the waves carry me back through my journey. This wasn't just a story of cutting ties or finding a new job. It was a map, a guide for anyone lost in the shadows of others' expectations. I imagined Grandma Eleanor standing beside me, her gentle smile urging me to share what I'd learned, not just for myself, but for anyone listening, anyone fighting to bloom. Life, I've found, is about discovering your own worth, even when the world tries to measure you against someone else's light. For years, I thought I had to earn my place, to prove I was more than Chloe's plain older sister. But standing here, I know my value isn't tied to their approval or anyone's. It's in the way I show up, working hard, loving fiercely, choosing myself. That's the first lesson: you are enough, just as you are, and no one gets to dim your shine. There's power in drawing lines too. Walking away from my parents and Chloe was like cutting an anchor that had held me underwater. It hurt, God, it hurt, but it was the only way to breathe. Sometimes love means letting go, not because you're cruel, but because you deserve peace. That choice taught me that boundaries aren't walls. They're gates letting in what nurtures you and keeping out what doesn't. I also learned to forgive myself. I carried guilt for years, blaming myself for not being the daughter my parents wanted, for not saving them from their own greed. But their choices weren't my fault, and neither were Chloe's lies. Releasing that weight was like planting a seed. It let me grow. You have to be kind to yourself first to see your scars as proof of survival, not failure. And then there's the anchor, the thing that keeps you steady when the storms hit. For me, it was Grandma Eleanor's tulip pendant, her words whispering through every dark night you'll bloom. It could be a memory, a song, a friend like Emma who sees you when you can't see yourself. Find that anchor, hold it close, and let it remind you of your strength. Finally, I've learned that true growth means lifting others as you rise. Starting that scholarship in Grandma's name isn't just about giving money, it's about planting tulips for girls like me. Girls told they're not enough. Helping them chase their dreams makes my own victories sweeter. We're not here to climb alone, we're here to light paths for each other. As the ferry docked Seattle's lights twinkling ahead, I felt a fire in my chest. This is what I want you to take with you. You're a tulip, too capable of blooming through the harshest winters. Don't let anyone, family, friends, or your own doubts tell you otherwise. Live boldly, love yourself fiercely, and plant seeds for others. That's how you make a life that's truly yours.